The major difference between other tactics games and King's Bounty is that King's Bounty focuses not on unit versus unit, but on army versus army combat. Also, each army may have a leader. In players' case, it's their main character. Leaders do not engage in direct combat, but they improve performance of their troops. They also cast various spells, ranging from support to direct damage. Tactics-wise, the most important new feature of King's Bounty 2 is that we now have 3D arenas that allow players to use differences in height and various features of the land to gain actual tactical advantage. 3D arenas cause you to think differently, even about familiar units. Take archers, for example. Now you can avoid their fire by finding some cover, like a hill. In previous games, it worked differently. If there was some kind of obstacle or the distance was too large, we still allowed the shot, but with reduced damage. We don't do that anymore. If archers don't have a line of fire, they can't shoot. When we create arenas, we work hand in hand with game designers to make sure that we deliver great gameplay experience as well as great visuals. It all begins with game designers who create arena prototype using basic hexes that denote height difference, terrain obstructions, line of sight, and so on. Otherwise, it's basically a blank that we need to dress up and fit into the environment. Sometimes it requires a lot of creativity because we can't deviate from the given prototype. But if we encounter some significant problem that we can't solve without deviating from the prototype, game designers are always willing to listen and work together to make sure that arena will be both interesting to play and look good. So we have a great teamwork. One of our most recent features is the ability to receive aid from allies in the battle. It means that if you complete certain quests, you get some additional troops for the duration of the battle. Of course, those troops depend on what faction you decided to ally with, what quest did you complete, and what moral choices you've made. For example, there's a quest about a gang at the old outpost. The player must pass through the outpost, and if they fulfill certain conditions, they'll get an allied unit that will spawn close to enemy archers and keep them occupied. So the player will get a tactical advantage and will be able to assault the bridge without suffering losses from enemy arrows. We try to make a rather flexible system because we want players to regularly change the composition of their army, picking specific units for specific fights to solve the tactical puzzles we've prepared for them. For example, we have undead units, and some of them have very high resistance to long-range attacks. So you can't hang back and exchange shots with them. They will inevitably outshoot you. Before a fight begins, players will see the composition of the enemy army and can look up enemy stats, abilities, and so on. They can choose not to start the fight, change the composition of their army, and only then engage in battle. Undead belong to a different ideal than Nostria units, and they won't get along well. But sometimes they're very useful. For example, in the aforementioned outpost arena, if you don't have the ally unit, you should get as many skeleton archers as possible. With their resistance to long-range attacks, they will let you turn the tables on the bandits at the old outpost. From the very beginning, we've made a decision that units will improve over the course of the game, so players would be able to keep even their starting units for a long time, if they want to. To do that, we have the Battle Experience system. Experience leads to increase in basic stats, so when the unit levels up, it gets more armor, and it will inflict more damage. It mostly applies to all units. Some units, especially high-tier ones, will get other benefits as well. Higher-level units will increase the strength of their active and passive abilities. Some may even gain new abilities on level up. Early-tier units are designed to let the player learn the basics of the game, so they have fewer active and passive abilities. So it's easier for the player to learn how to command these types of units and how to combine their abilities effectively. On the other hand, late-game units are intended for players who know the game and know how to get the most out of its mechanics. So these units have a lot of nuances that will be useful for a particular army composition or for certain arenas. Regarding main character archetypes, we've kept the same names: Warrior, Paladin, Mage. But we've decided to shift the balance a little. Warrior gives his soldiers a huge boost to their stats, so each one of them fights much harder. Paladins prioritize quantity. They have very high leadership, so they can take more troops with them. Mage, on the other hand, has a very small army, but very powerful spells and buffs. You have to keep in mind that players will also pay close attention to ideals of their character and associated talents. So each one will end up with a rather unique combination of skills and abilities. One of the major new features is that mana became a limited resource, like gold. So you can spend all of it and be left with nothing. It doesn't regenerate by itself. You can only buy it, find it, or loot it. Mana became a finite resource for story reasons. Mana is the life force of this world. It's energy, it's warmth. The world of Antara is dying. It's getting colder, which leads to the appearance of blight. And the first sign of it is that mana became finite. Second major difference is that now you don't need crystals to learn and upgrade your spells. To learn a spell, first you need to find a teacher. There are a few of them all over the world. Some of the most powerful spells will also require you to complete a quest. In Katauri's game, there were 3 schools of magic with distinct ideology, like chaos and order. In our game, schools of magic are based on elements. There are 8 basic elements in the world of Antara, and each school of magic has access to 2 of them. For example, we have School of Light and Life. So obviously they'll have a lot of buffs and spells that influence your target's health, as well as some high-level direct damage spells. So we have a lot of spells, and they're very varied, so I think players will find a practical use for each one of them. Besides combat magic, we'll also have world magic. Probably talk about it in depth in one of our following videos, but it's going to be as useful as it was in the original King's Bounty.